There was something I didn't mention in my last video on Josh Allen, and it's because Allen was so good in that wildcard game that I didn't want to detract from what he accomplished, but that something was the breakdown of the Patriots defense. Bill Belichick needs to reevaluate some things schematically, mainly revolving around the modern linebacker getting smaller and faster, but with the right hits in the draft and free agency, I know that's no guarantee, but it can be solved over time. I would argue the Patriots had some bigger problems that have left cracks in the foundation of the team. Greg Bedard from the Boston Sports Journal, who by the way is one of the more connected Patriots reporters, he appeared on local Boston radio station 98.5 The Sports Hub and delivered some bold news as to what in the world happened in Foxborough during the end of season collapse.
But at some point in time after the bye week, from what I hear, there's a disconnect between the coaching staff and the players in terms of, what they're being asked to do, how they're being coached. And if I had to guess, and this is a complete guess, sort of fitting the puzzle pieces that I've heard from people, I would look at it because if you look at their season, they're 2-4 to start the season. They're a mess on defense. They're not doing anything right. Very similar to the last 5 games. 3rd and 25 against Dallas. After that, it looked like an alpha male stepped in, Bill, and said, this is what we're going to do. This is how you're going to do it. And the guys did it. They all executed. I was happy. I'm watching it. Hey, this is Patriots defense. These guys are executing. I think there's a chance that during the bye week, Bill said, you know what? Things are going well now. Steve, Gerard, you got it back. And now all of a sudden, the players start questioning like, all right, well, is this Bill's game plan or whose is this? Who am I listening to, Steve or Gerard? And I just think, and you see it on film, they were a complete disaster in the last 5 games of the season. The advanced analytics bear that out too. And to me, you look at 2011 and that defense and that slop and that coaching staff and how well they were able to execute and almost win a Super Bowl with that group. This group was way more talented and they completely fell apart. And to me, I think you have to look at the coaching. And from what I understand, there's a disconnect between the coaches and the players and a lack of buy-in and a lack of belief. And you see that on film. That is on film in the last 5 games of the season.
So one of the big perceptions around the league is Gerard Mayo being more qualified than Steve Belichick. Of course, you can view that in the nepotism angle. But really, there's clear evidence of it happening right now, with Mayo getting several head coaching interviews while Steve isn't even sniffing a head coaching job. So in that sense, isn't it a bit backwards to have Steve calling the plays over Mayo? Neither of them are listed as defensive coordinator, and when Brian Flores left, it created a bit of a gap in qualified leadership and play callers to take that role. If anything, you'd think Mayo would be a more qualified play caller as the guy who wore the green dot speaker helmet and was frequently called the quarterback of the Patriots defense during his playing career. It gets even weirder in the offseason of 2019 when former Patriots safety Deron Harmon said Mayo was obviously the one calling plays. Turns out it wasn't so obvious to the man in charge, who then proceeded to put his son in charge of the defense. It's worth noting that the defensive leaders of this team, being Devin McCourty and Dante Hightower, played alongside Mayo earlier in their careers when Mayo was the leader of that unit. It's no stretch to say that Mayo was a role model for them, especially with Hightower playing the same position under Mayo's wing. And with the controversial decision to put Steve in charge of play calling, it's easy to see how some players would not only second-guess Bill's decision, but also Steve's calls on a weekly basis. According to Sports Illustrated's Albert Breer, when Devin McCourty publicly commented on a defensive play call, it set off alarm bells around the organization. Yes, that play call was the 3rd and 25 against the Cowboys that Bedard was referring to earlier. When you have leaders of the team second-guessing the coaches, that is a recipe for disaster. And disaster is exactly what we witnessed in the wild card game. When Bedard says you can see it on film, you might think he's exaggerating. But if you've watched someone like Matt Judon play the last month, then you know there's no way he's doing what he's being coached to do. Once again, a breakdown, and this one coming from the guy who was supposed to be the best player in their front seven. A guy who was voted a Pro Bowler for the 3rd year in a row and even received some All-Pro votes. Well, he absolutely disappeared for the final month. And really across the entire team, you see a lack of focus. Pre-snap penalties, glaring breakdowns in coverage. Breer even said there's a feeling from some newcomers on the team that maybe it wasn't as tight an operation as they expected it to be. Those newcomers he's referring to are probably veterans who signed in New England, but it seems Mac Jones wasn't satisfied with what he saw out of the team either. Multiple times this season he said the team needed to stop feeling sorry for themselves, and in his final press conference he said he wants to hold everyone to a higher standard and expand his leadership role for next year. Now as for what the future holds, well, I want to trend on the optimistic side. After 2009, when Belichick was on the sidelines telling Brady he just can't get the team to play the way they need, and how it was so effing frustrating, the Patriots figured things out and went 14-2 the next year. Of course, everything always comes with a Tom Brady clause, but even with these leadership / buy-in problems this year, the team still went 10-7. You could say, well, without these problems, they would have done better and maybe wouldn't have had the season end in nearly as big of an embarrassment, which is probably true. But these types of problems can also derail seasons full on, like when you look at the Urban Meyer Jaguars or Matt Patricia Lions. And I should mention that it's great to hear a rookie quarterback hold his team accountable. Mac Jones has that championship mentality. He knows what a disciplined championship team looks like because he experienced it under Nick Saban. And clearly this year's Patriots did not have that same championship mentality. But Jones is one big piece to the puzzle in helping the team find that down the line. So, did Bill lose the locker room? In a way, yes. This wasn't a typical Patriots locker room or even a typical winning locker room. Players failing to buy in means there were never any championship hopes in the first place. If you look at another first round exit like the Raiders, you know there was buy-in, but in the end the team just wasn't good enough. Like Bedard said, the Patriots have gotten by with far worse defenses than this one. This defense had the talent. Sure, they're older and a bit slower, but there are playmakers in their prime like Judon and JC Jackson who failed to show up as well. Even if you believe the Bills were going to win that night no matter what, there's no question the Patriots could have played them a hell of a lot better than they did. It was a full-on meltdown and cracks have appeared in the foundation of the team. With Devin McCourty and Dante Hightower set to become free agents, the leadership of this team could be looking a whole lot different next year. Even if they bring back McCourty, which is more likely than Hightower, it's clear changes need to be made. And the easiest of those changes, the best way to seal these cracks, would be giving Mayo play calling duties if he's not already the head coach somewhere else. I think it would gain the respect of the team and eliminate the headache of players questioning a coach. Big problem though, is the head coach really gonna demote his own son? The answer is no. At this point, only Robert Kraft can fix a situation like this.